Show the Cameron spirit, though. Last in our group is Ronnie Greer, Cameron High School class of 1969, and former Metro Nashville councilman. Ronnie.
Yes, sir, Mr. Greer.
Protocol having been set, he told you who I am. Cameron High School, what does it mean? South Nashville, what does it mean? I was in the class of 69, and Ida mentioned that we were a suspended class for 69. We did not have any athletics from March of 1968 until the football team started playing again in September of 1969. On that team with me was a guy named Oscar Haley, who was about 6'5", 6'6", and weighed about 275 pounds. Now, Oscar and I had grown up together, went to church together, so we all knew that if anybody was going to go play professional college football, Oscar had the size at that time to go. So he and I were already done butted up. He's going, I'm going with him. That didn't happen. Fast forward, I was given the opportunity, the blessing it was, to become the Metro Councilman for the 17th District, which included the other part of South Nashville. And for me, I represented the neighborhood I'd grown up in. My great-grandmother moved here from Smyrna, raised her family, started the raising of my family, so I count my years along Edge Hill in South Nashville to 140 years, back to my great-grandmother. From our school, from the Cameron High School, when they shut Cameron's doors in 1971, our teachers became the teachers of teachers. Mr. Leonard Morton became the director of music for Metro's public schools. There is a music teacher in every elementary school in Metro right now because Mr. Morton insisted that become the case. Miss Millie Washington said she left here in 1969 as her last teaching year, but guess what? She became the teacher of those who taught business administration. Excuse me, I stand corrected. But the point is, our teachers were just that great. They taught us, then they went to teach everybody else how that was done. Now, while I was in the Metro Council, Bird spoke to the problems we have in Nashville still today. As I was a member of the Metro Council, there were some newspaper reporters who were doing articles on the changing nature of South Nashville, the other part of South Nashville, because it started there first. They wrote articles that claimed that the new white people who had moved into our neighborhood were urban pioneers. Urban pioneers. So I asked a young lady who lived in the district and was a reporter for the Tennessee, and I said, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? She said, well, they came because they would come to save the neighborhood from the crack-infested neighborhood that it was. Anybody in here who lived or knew the other part of South Nashville, there was no crack-infested neighborhood. We had the same crack problem that every community in the nation had. In our neighborhood, the McKissicks lived on 15th and Edge Hill. They owned several homes on the block. If you don't know the McKissicks, they are one of the nation's largest engineering and construction firms. Dr. W.O. Smith lived on Villa, raised his children in South Nashville. He now has his monument stands at the corner of 8th and Edge Hill. It is called the W.O. Smith Community Music School, 40 years now and still going. The Reverend Kelly Miller Smith, who was the spiritual leader for the civil rights movement, those who worked in this town, lived on Caldwell Avenue. So we had in our neighborhood, when that lady said crack ghetto or pioneers, it pissed me off, excuse me. So I sent word back to the reporters for the Tennessean and the papers that if they ever made that statement again, certainly if they put it in print, they were not going to like anything that I would say. And because of my time on the council at that point, they knew that if I'm finna say something you ain't gonna like it. And I don't care if you don't. But I close with this. Mr. Jackson chose our teachers. He vetted them. They had to be of the same mind that he had, okay? The auditorium, the dispute at the Municipal Auditorium, the Board of Education, the directors went to Mr. Jackson to tell him to tell his students to go home and sit down somewhere. Mr. Jackson, knowing his students and knowing what he had taught us, he could not tell us to go home and sit down because we were not doing anything wrong. We were just being disruptive, very peacefully being disruptive. So we were blessed to have those folk to teach us, to raise us, to bring us to this point. And I say this, my time in the council, that was my greatest achievement, I would think. But top that was one of our teachers was asked one day, or I introduced myself at a gathering where there were some teachers, and I told them I'm the councilman for the 17th district. And one of those teachers who was here with us said to the group, Ola G. Hudson is her name. She said to the group, and he has done us quite proud. With that, I know that I did what I was supposed to do for those 8 years. Cameron High School is the reason for it. I'm going to call Ms. Washington's name because she is our love. That being said, if you're not registered to vote, get registered. If you're not voting, vote. You know, anybody who's not voting, bust them in their head. They have to vote. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. This is the most important election in our lifetimes. Some before me have mentioned that, the problems we had, segregated and doing those things, that was hard. I remember my father telling us, don't go past that block from the time I was 8, 9, 10 years old, because you might not come back from that block. Well, this election is worse for us, for this country, than the idea that I couldn't walk past Ackland Avenue for fear that white folk would get me over there and hang me by a tree. So if you're not registered to vote, please tell somebody. If you know somebody that has transportation, take them to the polls, because that's what we need to do. Thank you.
You are who I